this tutorial, we are going to cover the ACM macros and triggers. So let's take a look at some of the prerequisites for this application. You should be running ACM Enterprise version 5.10.4 or above. In reality, any of the versions of the enterprise system will work. We'll have standard macro and trigger functionalities. Proper reader license always required. Macros and triggers will work with Mercury controllers only. And once again, you don't need any special license to configure macros and triggers. An administrator account to ACM system is required. Let's go ahead and cover some of the important aspects of macros and triggers. One of the things that we always get asked is the difference. What is the difference between macros, triggers, and global actions and global linkages? So macros and triggers work at the controller level, and they do not depend on the ACM appliance. They also work specifically at that controller that you're programming, so you cannot use that in multiple controllers. So you have to program each individual controller depending on the type of functionality that you're looking for. So in that example, it would be very difficult to program using macros and triggers a company-wide lockdown. The opposite would be global actions and linkages. So global actions and linkages depend on the appliance. So if the controllers lose communication with the appliance, they will not be able to execute the global action and global linkage. The advantage of global action linkage, as the name apply, global, you can perform, for example, a company-wide lockdown. So you have the ability to create a configuration that says when this situation happens, go ahead and execute this action in all my controllers. So again, dependent on the appliance. So in this situation, global actions do need the appliance to be up and running. So macros and triggers are ideal for high security areas where even if the appliance is down, the functionality will continue to work. So if you lose network connectivity between the controller and the appliance, macros and triggers are ideal in that situation where even that communication is lost, you can continue to operate, you can continue to have that type of functionality locally at that particular controller. Once it's configured, that controller will store that task, will store that configuration. And even if that controller loses power, when power is restored to the controller, that functionality remains on the controller and will execute back as soon as, again, the power is restored to that controller. Very well, let's go ahead and take a look in a demo of macros and triggers. And I'm going to try to specify here a very easy, very simple scenario so we can go and configure that and give you a sense how the macros and triggers work in ACM. So the scenario is this: we want to disable a door with a panic button. So imagine that I have an input point, panic button. Whenever that input point or that panic button is in alarm condition, I want to disable the door. As soon as the panic button is restored to normal condition, I want to restore the door to normal operation. So that's the basic scenario that I'm going to try to program using macros and triggers. So let's go ahead and take a look in ACM and see how that looks like. Okay, I'm already logged into my ACM system. Under physical access panels, I just put online a demo box that I have, a demo kit that I have here using a 1501 controller. So to initiate a macros and triggers, you want to go into the controller itself. If we were doing global actions and linkages under physical access, here is global actions and linkages right there. So let's go ahead and take a look in this controller. Click on the controller. One of the things that I always advise people to do before you start, make sure that you're running the latest firmware version in your controller, whatever version of ACM you're running. It's very easy to do. Just look at the version that you're running right now and then click in the firmware button in here and look for, in this case, is a 1501. So I'm going to go ahead and look for the file, look which is the highest number file I have in here. I used to have a 24.1 and now is a 25.6. That's the latest. So great, I'm running the latest version. Awesome. So go back to that. So that's my controller. Also make sure the hour and the date is all correct. So that, in other words, you are synchronizing with the appliance and everything is, the date and time is synced properly. Once that's all checked, next step, let's go ahead and take a look. So here is macros and triggers. So the first thing you want to do is create the macros, or in other words, create the actions. I want to enable a door, I want to disable a door, and then I'm going to use triggers to say, whenever this input point is in an alarm condition, disable the door. Whenever this input point is in a restore condition, so came out of an alarm, now go ahead and enable the door. Okay, so let's go ahead, macros. And this is a clean one, so we'll go ahead and click and add a macro. And you're going to notice that when you do that, it adds a macro with this name here. Okay, you can click in the name and change it. So I'm going to call this disable door. Save it. And I'm going to go ahead here and create, actually I can do both. I'm going to do disable dash enable door, and you'll see in a second why I did that. I can actually create two separate commands in here. So I'm going to call this now disable. Disable reader. Okay, select command. This is a door mode control right there. Notice that there's a whole bunch of different options in here, things and actions that you can take in ACM. I'm going to concentrate on an easy one to start, and then we'll have more videos in a more specific and more sophisticated advanced functionality using macros and triggers. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go here to door mode. I'm going to select that door. In this case is my clearbox door one. I just have one door here in the system. And I'm going to go here and say disable the door. Okay. And this is the important part. You need to pay attention to this part. Here, I'm going to select this as group A. So I can have a trigger looking into a macro and executing a group A action, group B, C, or D. That's why I'm doing in this particular macro both functions, enable and disable. So I'm going to use group A to disable the reader, and I'm going to create another macro, and I'm going to assign that to group B. So when I run the trigger, I can say, in alarm condition, run this macro, but only group A, so disabling the reader. And when the reader goes, when the input point goes back to restore to normal condition, I'll tell the trigger once again, go ahead and run this macro, but at this time, group B to restore the door. So this one is done. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I'm going to create another macro. And this will be restore reader. Same thing. I'm going to go select door mode control. And in this case, card only. This is just a card only reader. If you had a card and pin, card or pin, or anything else, you could do it. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And here's again the trick. Now I'm going to select group B. Save that. And now you see both actions in here. One that disables, tied into group A, and one that restores the door, tied into group B. Very well. So now next step here is the trigger. And the trigger should be pretty simple. Click in trigger. Go ahead and add a trigger. And in this case, you can just go ahead and say what this is going to do. So disable door. I'm going to click this on enable. So this will execute. I want this to execute. I could do this business hours or any other type of schedule. In this case, I'm just going to use 24 hours. Macro I'm going to use, I only have one, so the system already picked up the macro for me. If I have different macros, all I had to do is just open that up and select the particular macro in this case. Command, I'm going to go here and use execute only action A. See that? And then in the next one, I'm going to use to say execute only action B. So action A. Source will be a input point. I'm going to select, and you notice at the source there's a whole bunch of other options. In this case, I'm just going to use an input point. And I'm going to select my controller, and this will be my panic button. I already named my input 2 as a panic button just for ease of use. And then here is the change of state. What I want this to do will be alarm condition. Okay. You notice that there is something here called variables, trigger variables. What this allows you to do is add conditions to the execution of this macro. So I could say if this variable is turned on and this one, then execute. So I could have other types of macros to run and turn on variables and use those variables as a condition to execute a particular trigger. I'm not going to cover much in details on this. We'll do this on a more advanced macro and trigger configuration. So, okay, once this is configured, I'm going to go ahead and just save that as an alarm. So this is the one that will disable. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a one that will enable the door. So in this case, restore reader. That, and then go to, I'm going to select 24 hours. Command here will be execute action B only, so to restore. And my input point will be the trigger, will be the source, same way. I'm going to select that same panic button and change of state. This is when the point is in secure. So secure means restore. Last stage was an alarm or fault. That is correct. So I'll just keep on that. There's other option in there. Active to inactive. I'm just going to keep last state was alarm or fault. Go ahead and hit save. Now this is programmed. So this was programmed right. Now we're going to switch to the doors and we'll be able to see if this is working properly. So let's take a look at that. So go here to doors. I should be able to see my door right over here. It is showing closed. Is this one here? Go ahead and highlight it. So I'm going to go ahead and press my input point, my panic button, and notice now the door is disabled. Okay? Release, and the door is back to normal. So I just released that input point. Press it again. Door is in disabled condition. And release. Door goes back to card only. And you notice that it's very fast the way this happens because it's running at the controller itself, so the decision-making process is very quick. So once again, press the button, goes to a disabled condition. If I try to present a card now, it wouldn't take the card. It would say just can't do it. And then door back to normal. Okay.